let me say, a word in defense of reason in dialogue with faith.
Because faith is that proof. Faith unites us to that substance.
But reason, in order to realize its full potential, needs the horizons revealed by and truths contained in the faith. And not just any faith, but the Catholic faith.
Who's the biggest opponent of sexualityism? Well, who has the miter with the target on it? Okay, it's us. Now, I'm not saying that all religious freedom controversies in the United States are about sexualityism. I mean, we have tension with new immigrant religions. We always have the fear that religion is irrational or violent or against women. There's all this sort of stuff out there generally. But the fact is that the most pronounced opponent of religious freedom right now is sexualityism. In terms of the number of current threats to religious freedom, where are they coming from? People who want us to pay for birth control at religious institutions. People who want religious institutions and religious individuals to be forced to recognize and facilitate same-sex marriage. I heard the saddest story from a young woman in DC the other day. Since DC has made same-sex marriage legal, this young woman had been providing wedding gowns and flowers and photographers free. She got like a consortium of people who knew that some of the poorest people in DC were not marrying because they didn't want to just have what they call a downtown wedding, just go to the Justice of the Peace. She was helping them put together the trappings of a wedding for free. She had to go out of business because she's not allowed to offer her services to the public if she doesn't do same-sex weddings. So she was offering them to the poorest communities in DC, but she can't do that anymore. We also are being told we have to go along with facilitating same-sex parenting, that we have to go along with abortion. The ACLU, the crafter of this religious exemption that we're fighting for now, against now, sent a letter to Health and Human Services about a year ago saying that Catholic hospitals were violating a provision of the Emergency Medical Treatment Act because they weren't performing abortions on women who needed them on an emergency basis. And then there also, of course, is their desire for us to actually recognize the good, that we have to say, this is the old Lincoln-Douglas debate, that something that we will not believe and we do not believe is right, and that we must cooperate and say that same-sex practices are something that we believe to be a good for the human person. You know, in Canada, it's very famous that the Human Rights Commission brings, ministers and religious clergy before them. You know, in the UK, that families who announce that they are Christian and believe in what Christianity believes are no longer allowed to foster children, because it might be that they pass on their disapproval of homosexual acts to foster children. In the US, in Massachusetts, in California, and elsewhere, we have mandatory books in our schools for children that promote the idea that same-sex and opposite-sex relationships, that there's absolutely no difference between them in terms of their personal or social goods. Why is the church being targeted on this? It's pretty obvious. What we stand for is not with the opposite of sexualityism. I also think, frankly, that this fight over redefining the meaning of sex is also about redefining male-female relationship, redefining the meaning of the relationship between our body and soul, redefining our very givenness, right? It's a recapitulation of original sin, in a way, if you really think about it, that we refuse to accept we are who we are, and that we can't just say, this is not so. I will tell you that is not true. This means that. Even though everything in my body and my mind and social outcomes indicate that this means this, I tell you this does not mean this. That is just social construction. This means that. Which is just another way of saying, God, I want to be equal to you. I want to create. I want to give things the meaning they have. They have no natural meanings. I think and the church is the chief, will not move on the notion that there is objective reality in natural law. Finally, the church stands in the way of the idea that all technology and materialism and increased material outcomes is progress. There's brilliant parts, in particular of Spe Salvi, where Pope Benedict specifically rejects what he calls the myth of progress. That as long as technology is moving forward, the human person, qua made in the image and likeness of God, qua made for communion, is moving forward. And he says, no, every generation has to accept and live out the truth for itself. So we are the chief opponent of the notion that technology or increased material wealth or social prominence or any of the things that contraception and abortion represent in women's lives, according to the government, are progress.